I'm really happy to be here tonight, and I'm going to introduce our guest of honor. I wanted to tell you that People magazine called him one of the top 10 most successful young people in Hollywood. He began performing at the age of 8. At the age of 15, he had already landed gigs at world-renowned comedy clubs in Los Angeles like the Improv, the Laugh Factory, Comedy Store. At 17, he became the youngest staff writer in television history at Nickelodeon, which would become a home for him. And he's come a long way since then as an actor, a musician, a stand-up comic, a television host, a producer, entrepreneur, philanthropist, father, and now an author. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Nick Cannon.
How you guys doing? Woo!
Hello.
Yes, sir.
You are everywhere. I mean, you're doing everything. But this is your first book about poetry. Why poetry?
Oh, man, I feel like poetry is definitely the best form of expression. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and it allows you to tap into your creativity in such a way that, you know, it's an emotional connection, so it's really cool.
And this book came out of an inspiration from when you were a kid. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I honestly was inspired by several things. I mean, poetry in general, but the first poet that I was truly inspired by and introduced me to the world was Shel Silverstein. So to be able to be a fan of, you know, Where the Sidewalk Ends, A Light in the Attic, and to see what he did with those words and illustrations really touched me. It's like opened a whole new world for me. At the same time, it was simultaneously the idea of, you know, I was a child of hip hop as well. So to be able to experience those two worlds at the same time was really dynamic for me.
You know, a lot of people, do you guys know the writings of Shel Silverstein? Brilliant writer.
Amazing dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's amazing is if you ask a lot of people, he had some great impact on their lives. I know he was one of my favorites. I loved his poem Messy Room because I kept a messy room.
Yeah.
What was your favorite of his writings, though?
I would have to say my favorite of Shel's writings. I mean, I loved all the poetry books, but The Giving Tree was something I was probably, right? That was just the simplicity in it, but how complex it was. Yeah. And, you know, even as a kid, it's just, you know, to know so much about this relationship between this young boy and this tree, and even to where he was always an old man and the tree was still there for him. It was outstanding.
Do you guys like poetry? Sure, right? Here's the thing. I think poetry sometimes gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
Some people call it elitist, but really, I mean, it's everywhere, right? It's a real showcase for the written word, and so there are poetic references in music, in all of pop culture. But you had some very early influencers when it came to poetry, didn't you? Aside from Mr. Silverstein.
Yeah. I definitely have to say, you say a bad rap. I would just say, honestly, it actually was rap music that actually was my first introductions, as well as just, you know, being a child of hip hop and an 80s baby. That's just street poetry, you know what I mean? It's poetry to a beat. And, you know, today we all know hip hop is probably the biggest cultural thing, you know, around the world, that allows every culture to connect, and they connect through this music and this culture that we've all kind of, you know, from the 80s on been able to be stewards of. So it's really outstanding to be able to bring the world of written poetry and obviously, you know, street poetry, which we call hip hop, together in one book.
And you did that.
I tried.
You did, because in your new book, Neon Aliens. Okay, Neon Aliens ate my homework. That is like one of the coolest covers ever. I love that cover.
Man. We had a lot of fun with that. Thank you.
But the poem you wrote, School of Hip Hop, is a direct shout out to these great rappers, and I wondered if you'd read it, and we have it on our iPad right here.
Absolutely, I would love to.
And here it is.
It's kind of cool. I'll read the poem, but then also want to just even say, like, there's some interesting ideas that I really got excited with the wordplay and stuff that I did with this. But I'll start off and then I'll get into that afterwards. It says, Kool Herc the founder, Flash the grandmaster, KRS-One the professor, Coach Busy B and Kool Mo D instructed on how to be a word wrestler. Chuck D the lecturer, while Flav had a love for PE. But my favorite 3 teachers were Run DMC. The girls were Salt and Pepper while the boys were Beastie. After recess, we cooled down, cold chilling with Ice Cube and Ice-T. Eric B and Rakim taught us work because the God don't play. Todd made the class hard as hell. Raise your hand for Mr. LL Cool J. Wanted to receive a degree in NWA. The curriculum was formulated by Dr. Dre. Dougie, Slick Rick, Snoop, Eminem, Outkast, Biggie, Pac, Nas, and Jay. Hopefully one day I can graduate and proudly say hip hop hooray. So I think it's kind of cool.
You have a great story about this.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously it rhymes and it kind of makes sense. But for anybody, this is really like a history lesson in hip hop if you really pay attention, because Kool Herc is really the founder of hip hop. He was the first person to actually take what was called toasting in Jamaica, where, you know, they would have dance hall parties in Jamaica and there would be a guy that would get on the mic and toast, you know, while there was someone else playing music. So he took that idea of toasting and brought it to the Bronx, and he was literally the first person to take, you know, his mother's turntables and speakers and put it and have a party and talk over the records. So him being the founder, and then, you know, as we all know, Grandmaster Flash, it says Flash is the Grandmaster. He's the one that really turned into an art form, you know, and to this day is still, you know, one of the greatest, if not the greatest DJ. KRS-One, as we all know from Boogie Down Productions, he truly is a professor in hip hop. He teaches, you know, at several different colleges. So it's like even I'm kind of giving them these terms, but this is what these guys actually do. Coach Busy B, or Busy B and Kool Mo D, if a lot of people don't know, it was technically the first battle rap ever on, you know, they actually have it documented where Kool Mo D and Busy B at a party. Before them, you know, people wouldn't battle rap. They would actually just say their rhymes and say how cool the DJ was. But Busy B figured, you know, he wanted to be the top, and, you know, that's why I call him the first. They instructed us how to battle a word wrestler. Chuck D, as we all know from Public Enemy, is truly a lecturer. This is what he has done from, you know, his music from the 80s all the way until today. And we all know his sidekick, Flavor Flav, loves to play. And I kind of like play the word on, you know, I think, what was Flavor Flav's show? The Flavor of Love. So I was like, Flav had the love for PE, obviously Public Enemy. And then as we all know, Run DMC was, you know, my favorites. One of the most popular girl rap groups was Salt and Pepper. As we know, the boys are Beastie. And then I just started naming some of our favorites. But it was just a really cool wordplay on how, you know, some of the greats and the best to ever do it. You get a quick history lesson in a small poem. So I get really excited and passionate about that one.
He does.
Yeah.
I love this book. I
Thank you.
do. I think this book is amazing. I love the title.
Thank you.
But I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to steal your thunder for just a moment.
Uh-oh.
I am. I'm going to read, one of my favorites in this book is a poem called Put on a Smile. It's simple and to the point and powerful. Be who you are, not who the world wants you to be. Love yourself, not the person the world wants to see. Embrace your flaws and turn them into a style. The best kind of fashion is when you put on a smile. Here's the thing. This is a really important poem for kids to hear.
Right.
A really important poem for kids to hear. I think this idea of self-acceptance and expression of who you are, and I think there's so much of that running through the book is why and we'll get to some of that, a little bit more of it, but that's what makes this book so special. But back to the title.
Right.
Where the heck did that come from?
Neon aliens ate my homework. It's a true story. It really happened. It did. No, honestly, it's a true tale in the sense that when I was in the 4th grade, I didn't do my homework, and I had the audacity to tell my 4th grade teacher that I was abducted by aliens the night before.
Did she believe you?
And you know what? She humored me. She enjoyed the fact that she knew I didn't do my homework, but the fact that I was creative enough to come up with the most absurd story. She definitely phoned home and called my mother. One, to tell her that I didn't do my homework, but 2, to tell her that, you know, how creative I was, and that, you know, that they wanted to tap into my creativity. So, you know, needless to say, I never missed a homework assignment again. But it was really cool to, you know, that the teacher actually took time to acknowledge that, yo, this kid is really creative, and we wanted to tap into his imagination even more.
I want you to recite that poem.
Yes.
But we're going to do it in a little bit, because I want to get back. I want to take Nick back a little bit in time and go back to when you were 8 years old. So you've been writing since you're 8. I remember when I was a kid, I wrote in a journal because it was a safe place for me and a great place to escape.
Yeah.
Was writing an escape for you when you were a kid? Was it some sort of a safe place for you to go? And did you journal?
Oh, I definitely did. I mean, I have my first spiral notebook when I was 8 years old. And interestingly enough, during that time, 8 years old, when I first started making entries, as we say, that's also probably the first time I had ever experienced a life hardship or a difficult time where my grandfather, my mother's father, was killed in a car accident, and I really didn't know how to deal with that.
And you were 8?
When I was 8. And he was such a powerful influence in my life because he was a minister to our family and at the local church, but also was the person who introduced me to music. He was a musician as well. And during that process, like, that's where I would vent and really found a way to get my emotions out, and saw this as a place of peace, you know, and that I can actually voice my opinion. Because, I mean, we all know at 8, you're still trying to even figure out thoughts and how to put them together. So to have writing in a journal or a notebook there for me to be able to get thoughts out was really cool.
All right, personal.
Personal.
Do you remember your first entries?
I do remember my first entries. They weren't poems quite yet. They were just love letters to girls. At 8, I was on it. But it really was. It was just certain things. And, you know, really, they were love letters to girls, but at the same time, probably goals for the future and what I wanted to be and thoughts like that. So that's really what I first started writing down, and you know, how I was feeling emotionally, whether it was about being sad that my grandfather was no longer there, or, you know, the crush I had on the girl Jasmine next door. So it was always something like that before I got to the place of poetry.
You still have that notebook, right?
I do. My mother has it somewhere. Yeah. She kept all my
come
stuff.
On, that is
just
sweet.
Like a mom, you know, you're supposed to keep all of that stuff.
I do have a little bit of intel on you. You shared a bit of it today. When you were a kid, you wanted more than anything to have a race car bed.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, he wanted a bed in the shape of a race car.
Yeah, you remember the race car beds, you know?
Yeah.
When you grow up in the hood, you don't get those type of things. You're lucky if you get your own bed at all. So, but you would see, I remember like watching like Silver Spoons, and it's cool. Like they would have all of those cool beds and stuff, and I always wanted a race car bed. And now I got my son one, so I feel like I finally got my bed.
I won't tell you the kind of bed I wanted, but your first poem, actually, when you assimilated words into poetry, had something to do with this.
Oh yeah, cars.
Yeah, I was getting to that. Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, from the race car bed to obviously, you know, my love for motor vehicles. I've always had a love for cars, even at a young age.
You know this one by heart.
I do.
This is your first poem, 8 years old.
First poem I ever wrote, so please don't judge me. I was 8. Lamborghini, Ferrari, Mercedes-Benz. To get one of these, you got to have ends. Talking about dollars, in other words, big bucks. You can't go riding in those farmer trucks. Cars. I was 8. It was good though for an 8-year-old.
I think it still holds up. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Speaking of which, what when you look back at your notebook, when you can steal it away from your mother, what is Nick now, adult Nick, think about those early writings?
Pretty impressed.
Yeah?
I mean, honestly, I joke a little bit, but obviously you get to go back. I mean, that's the beauty of writing, is to where you can see the mindset you were in or the thought process that you had at that time. And, you know, like I said, starting at 8 and, you know, through my elementary to junior high school years to high school, it's like, oh, wow, some things I felt like I was really in tune on certain things, and some things like, oh, man, I didn't know anything at that time. But it was just like still being able to express yourself, and the emotions that were on the paper are pretty cool.
So you grew up in you spent time between Charlotte, North Carolina, and San Diego.
Yeah.
So growing up in inner city San Diego, that was part of the inspiration for some of your poems and Neon Aliens. I was wondering if you would. I love this one.
Oh, thank you.
I wonder if you'd read it. Weird Concrete.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, like you say things like, "Oh, you grew up in the tough streets of San Diego." That doesn't even sound right. Like, if you say San Diego, you think like surfboards and Mini Coopers. But growing up in a small section called Southeast San Diego that was closer to the border of Tijuana and stuff. It was a little tough, and it was a weird neighborhood just in that sense, to where, you know, it was a low income environment, but at the same time I was so proud to be from there, and still the scenery around it was still beautiful in my sense. So that's kind of where the idea of Weird Concrete came from. So it says, we grew up on weird concrete. Guess that's why we never feared concrete. Every color is more vibrant on revered concrete. You could even see the beauty in the blood-smeared concrete. We live far away from top-tier concrete, that we feel ownership because we raised and reared concrete. Our morals, goals, and most of all, our word appeared concrete. Yeah, we keep it real, even on genetically engineered concrete. Though it was hard and rough, we persevered concrete. When school let out, we cheered concrete. We learned to love it when those above it jeered concrete. We were taught to protect ours when enemies neared concrete. We came from genuine tough love known as sincere concrete. We used our strength to rise above as we cleared concrete. Sometimes we tried to run away from it, but it never disappeared concrete. Remember, our forefathers and ancestors pioneered concrete. That's why we should never snicker or sneer concrete, because of those who marched and volunteered concrete. They allow us today to sway and walk cavalier concrete. Footsteps, handprints, date of birth, or that special year concrete. In the distance, outsiders looked over and peered concrete, but they will never know how it feels to be speared concrete. Covered and smothered, immortalized as frontier concrete. Mixtures of love and pain we blocked and interfered concrete. Listen closely to my heart and you can hear concrete. Trust and believe, I live for this weird concrete. Thank you.
Absolutely love that poem.
Thank you.
This book, it's, you know, safe to say, and you've been vocal about this, is very personal.
Absolutely.
Some of the poems, in fact, were inspired by real kids.
Yeah.
Many of whom you've met and interacted with at this incredible hospital in Queens, St. Mary's Hospital for Children. Can you talk? I know this is such a passionate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a busy guy for so many reasons. I mean, just I like to be on the go. I always like to do stuff and keep it moving. My ADD has always got me doing several things, and you know, even like when you listed my resume before we got out here, it's just like, he does this, 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 and this. But when I show up to a children's hospital, time freezes. Nothing else matters. And it's truly a place that puts everything in the proper perspective for me when it comes to life, because you walk in there and you see these young people dealing with so many hardships, but still able to put a smile on their face. And you step back and look like whatever my problem was or issue was during the day has nothing on what they're going through. And they make conditions that are so difficult seem so easy. And I honestly believe that when I get a chance to visit St. Mary's or any children's hospital, it's like the closest I've ever really been to angels. Because when you think about all that they're going through that they don't deserve and still able to express love and joy, it's like that's what life is really all about when you can connect with those type of beings.
So true.
Thank you.
It's a great place.
Yeah,
it's
honestly,
a really amazing
it is.
place.
I feel I'm inspired every time I go to a children's hospital or even get the opportunity to experience anyone with hardships, but especially young people.
Shift gears just a little here to talk about illustrations, because the illustrations in this book, I mean, even when you think about Shel Silverstein, those illustrations enhanced his words, right? So I think what you did here is you actually, when you approached this book, you actually looked at a very specific kind of artwork that you wanted to. Can you talk about that a little? Absolutely.
Well, again, I felt like this book was all about bridging the world of, you know, traditional poetry and hip hop. And when you think of the 4 elements of hip hop, graffiti is definitely one of the real foundations. And I wanted people to be able to experience that throughout this book. And when you think about what street art has become, I mean, you know, originally when it first started, people, you know, looked down on it and, you know, like,
of course, at it as vandalism.
Yeah, vandalism. Yeah. But, you know, of course, vandalism is wrong. But when you really understand where these young people were coming from, and it was just another form of self-expression, and they were true artists. I mean, amazing artists. And to this day, I mean, some of them are world-renowned, and that art form has grown to not only become a huge industry, but it's just something that's, you know, really embedded in the culture. I wanted to make sure, in the same way that Shel did with his, you know, iconic illustrations, I had the opportunity, you know, myself and a few other amazing street artists to kind of push that message through, and they helped paint the pictures, you know, for several of my poems. And it's really cool because when you think about street art, you know, I figured I couldn't do it myself. One, because I don't feel like I'm all right when it comes to art.
But you've done some of the illustrations in this book yourself.
I did. I had the opportunity to do it, and you know, I dabble in it. But I feel like, you know, I was able to surround myself with some amazing street artists as well. And that's the beauty. Like, if you go outside and look at a wall, you'll see, you know, half a dozen or more artists on one wall. So I kind of wanted to bring that experience to the book as well.
Yeah, and brilliantly. You talk about making your poetry exciting and relevant to kids. But, you know, this book isn't just about kids. It's not just for kids. It speaks to everyone, from the ode to jazz greats like Satchmo and Miles Davis to poems about aliens eating your homework, which is something we can all relate to. But your poetry is really for everyone, isn't it?
It truly is. And I mean, you know, not to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to being inspired by Shel. When you think about all of his poems, like I have a love and affinity for his work just as much today as I did when I was introduced to it when I was 8. And I feel like it's the same idea and concept of which I'm trying to convey and, you know, hopefully get the opportunity to accomplish is I write about issues and ideas that we all have, but try to make it as simple and as open and as free for a young child to accept and enjoy as well. So that's kind of the concept. Was like I wanted the simplicity, but I still wanted to have the weight and the heart in the same way that, you know, the poems when growing up that I experienced.
So on that note, what do you want most for kids and adults, anyone here in this room? What do you want them to take away from this book?
I would love for people to take away fun. I mean, I had fun writing it and putting it all together. And then, you know, they're humorous and they're light, and, you know, if you can take a moment and step away from whatever you're doing that may have you stressed out or, you know, kind of dealing with life's real issues, if this could take you away from that for a second, I mean, I feel like, honestly, you know, that's one of the reasons I was put on this earth, is to make people smile. And if this book can do that and inspire at the same time, that would be the only other thing. If someone can be inspired to be more creative, a young person to express their creativity, or even, like I said, just to brighten their day and make them say, hey, that was cool, that took my mind off of things for a minute, I would love that.
I want to end with, you were quoted as saying that writing is at the center of everything I do as an artist. Music, comedy, and creating stories for television and film. Clearly, that's still true.
Definitely, definitely. People always say, you know, if you could only do one thing, what would you do? Or what do you love the most? And I always say writing, because the core of everything that I do is writing. My job is to wake up and be creative. That's truly a blessing. I mean, whatever I put my mind to, it can happen, and it all starts on the paper for me. Whatever idea, whatever song concept, whatever television or film concept, it all starts with, waking up and jotting something down.
Yeah.
So, that's the blessing that we have with writing, and the freedom that we have is that we can write and create anything.
Well, this is your second book.
Yes.
You wrote a beautiful holiday story with about your children.
For them babies. Yeah, my kids.
And which we love. But I can't think of a better way to end today than coming back to the writing.
Yeah.
The writing that you do so well, the writing that's, I know, going to inspire a lot of kids and adults. And would you read two of maybe your favorite pieces?
Oh, sure.
I know one of them is Neon Alien.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then you have another beautiful poem called The Wordsmith.
Oh, yeah. The Wordsmith is something that I kind of would always say, and it was just something that I didn't even, I think it was the same thing. When you go to sleep and wake up with a brilliant idea. So I think it goes something where it says, I'm an artist with words, I think in cursive. I fall asleep with a dream and wake up with a purpose. So it's like...
So simple.
Yeah.
I love that. And elegant. Nick is going to end our conversation by reading the title poem from his book, Neon Aliens Ate My Homework, which, by the way, is available as we speak. Go to your iPhones now, click on iTunes, the book is available. Neon Aliens Ate My Homework.
Neon Aliens Ate My Homework, based on a true story. Okay, I know this sounds totally berserk, but last night, neon aliens ate my homework. They zoomed down right above my home and zapped me up inside their dome. These little green guys glow brightly in the dark. Their dripping fangs snap with the force of a shark. I was scared out of my wits, not knowing my fate, thinking to myself, I'm gonna be next on their plate. What would satisfy the hunger of these guys? Would they leave me alone if they heard my cries? I offered them my notebook and even my backpack. I feared they could make me disappear with the zip zap. The aliens weren't done. They still wanted something to eat. So I took out my totally finished algebra worksheet. That did the trick, and they sent me home without warning. When I got back, it was 8 o'clock the next morning. I ran in the house and cried for my mom. She hugged me tight and told me to keep calm. Mom said, just tell your teacher the whole story. She'll understand what happened, don't you worry. Alien invasions are common in this nation. And so are kids with fantastic imagination. True story.
Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Cannon.
Thank you.
We are going to take some questions from the house, and I think we have somebody walking around with a microphone, so make sure you ask your question in the mic.
Wait,
what's your name?
What's up? What's your name, man?
I'm Jeremiah Williams.
All right,
Jeremiah.
Mr. Williams.
And I'm 9.
And he's
Great
9.
age.
Yeah.
How was Real Husbands of Hollywood for you?
Your mama let you watch that show? You're only 9 years old. Now, you know what? That show is some of the most fun I've ever had. When you think about, Kevin Hart and I came up in the game together since we were youngsters. And to be able to, share success and kind of grow with your friends is amazing. And then to be able to act silly on set and, make a TV show is one of those things where it's like, I can't believe they're actually paying us to do this, because I'm just hanging out with my friends, coming up with the most absurd and silly concepts, and it makes for great television. You guys watch that show, Real Husbands of Hollywood? It's fun. So, it's all Kevin Hart's fault, though. If anything, if it spoils your 9-year-old mind, blame it on Kevin.
Didn't you just lose to him at the NBA Challenge?
Well, technically.
Wait a minute.
I mean, it's a team effort.
Okay, all right.
We won the game.
Yeah.
He actually still got MVP.
You won the dancing, though.
Yeah, I don't even understand. How do you lose the game but still get MVP? But, Kevin's a good guy.
But you showed him your moves.
Yeah, I had to, he can't beat me in a dance battle. I got a mean running man.
Hey, Nick, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I think you're phenomenal. I just enjoy watching you. Just have a very likable persona, and I just thank you. I have a 9-year-old cousin who is writing screenplays at this moment.
Wow!
And I just think it's awesome. He tells these stories. What advice can you give me to go back to share with his parents to encourage him to keep just doing what he does?
That's what I say. Keep going. I mean, I was a young person like that. To me, there were no limitations. I didn't know limitations, and I believe that's one of the reasons why I'm where I am today is because no one told me no. And the people who did tell me no, they were drowned out by all the positive people that were telling me I could do whatever I wanted to do. So I truly believe, keep going more. Just encourage and if there is any way, because on the flip side, and I tell this to a lot of the people when I'm hosting America's Got Talent, throwing your young people in adult situations too quickly is dangerous. But allowing them to thrive amongst their peers is amazing. So I know a lot of parents and even teachers at times want to put their kids in an adult environment because they are so talented, or they may even be geniuses in a sense. But sometimes when you put children in adult situations, and especially when they become judgmental situations, that gets a little scary. So as long as you allow them to be a child and to be childlike and to understand that there are no limitations to their imagination, that's really what it's all about.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I actually want to follow behind that question because I'm an author myself. I'm a first-time published author, and I have cerebral palsy.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
And congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
You're a huge inspiration. I actually got a copy here for you as a gift.
Thank you.
It has tips on how to overcome any situation for those who are going through anything in life. And it was actually inspired by my favorite singer, Beyonce, and I got the chance to meet with her last year.
That's what's up.
And
you got to meet with Queen
really
Bee.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give you that, and I just wanted to get some tips on how to, continue to be a successful writer.
Oh, man, I need to get some tips from you. How you going to get some tips from me? Beyonce ain't read my book.
She will.
No, this is awesome. I mean, again, I'm inspired by you, so I can't wait to crack this open and read it. But then at the same time, man, it's continue on. I mean, from one creative to another. I mean, we got to continue to surround ourselves with other creative people and feed off of that energy. So I'm inspired by you. Hopefully, you're inspired by me, and together we can continue to inspire others.
Can I just add something also from the publisher's perspective? You're published already. That's like amazing, by the way. Just so you know, it's not easy to get a book published.
It's a real book. Like, my book don't got this many words.
My Instagram and my email's in there, so
oh good.
I'm following you
on the
immediately.
left-hand side of the page, like when you first open it. So.
Oh, absolutely, I got it all.
Congratulations.
I autographed it and everything for you. So.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate this.
Enjoy.
It's a great gift. I appreciate it. Thank
you.
Yes, hi Nick. Just a sort of a personal question. I'm a father, have 4 kids.
Awesome.
I grew up in a very different neighborhood, very different country in Colombia to my kids, and my kids are in a better position. Being a father yourself, and having kids who are probably growing differently than you are, what is the one advice? Because I'm always giving my kids advice, but I always figure there's one that's going to stuck.
Yeah, I deal with that daily. I think about that all the time. I mean, obviously, when becoming a parent, you find out that you don't know as much as you think you know. So every day I have certain messages that I wish to convey, and I kind of want to make sure I could kind of, not be convoluted with the ideas, but just as clear. And, because when you're dealing with these impressionable minds, you want the right things to go to them. I think in my situation with my two children, just establishing love and normalcy and acceptance regardless of whatever else is around is what I try to focus on the most. Allowing them to be the individuals that they want to be. But at the same time, being a parent and setting proper boundaries, but at the same time allowing them to be as free-flowing and as loving as possible and feel loved. I always feel like, you know, because everybody has their own way of raising and what's right and what's wrong. But I think if the core idea is unconditional love, you can't go wrong.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Hi, Nick. My name is Willette. I didn't get a chance to finish reading your book, but I did read various excerpts of it, and I knew you grew up as a spiritual young man.
Yes.
And I knew that influenced you a lot through reading some of the passages in your book. Will you do things for children to realize that just because you're 8 doesn't mean you can't be spiritual?
Oh, yeah. I mean, spirituality is my life. I mean, and I feel like I have a new idea of spirituality, and I think I try to convey that in a way to where I go against the grain. I mean, being a kid who was a PK, as they call it, a preacher's kid, there's very traditional ideas that you grow up with, and if you've ever experienced a PK, we're very rebellious. Because we have knowledge of what, you know, our parents may have taught us in whatever religion that we believe, but we still want to be just as cool and just as much as accepted as all the other kids. So I was in this weird, unorthodox upbringing of a kid who wanted to be different and really was different because of my upbringing. So as much as I wanted to be cool, I could never be allowed in the cool crowd because of my spiritual upbringing. So today I feel like I can do everything and still have a strong spiritual base and understand that we all, whatever it is that you believe, you understand that, you know, this universe is real and you find yourself within it however you wish to find yourself. So I encourage everyone just to tap into their inner self, and whatever journey or whatever path or map that you take, that you follow that and believe in it wholeheartedly, and it's going to work for you. So that's truly the idea that even with my own children, you know, I want them to understand that the spirituality comes from within themselves first, and then to make sense of it, they need to go out and find that, research that, and I feel like that's the core of spirituality. Not to get too deep into it, but it's just finding your inner self and finding your inner peace that helps guide you through this silly thing we call life.
I think your mother and father would be so proud of you right now.
I hope so. Do. My mom's shopping for curtains in the city somewhere.
Hello, Mr. Cannon.
How are you?
I'm Jossie.
Can we speak up just a little?
I'm Jossie.
Jossie, nice to meet you, Jossie.
It's funny, I just walked down the block and said, oh my gosh, Nick Cannon's in the Apple store. Like, what? I didn't even know.
Oh, that's cool. Welcome. Glad you came.
Thank you. I actually did an interview with Kaylani.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, last week I worked for Mass Appeal.
Oh, dope.
And I wanted you to look at the finished piece if you could, and just
absolutely. One, thank you, because you know we are big fans of Mass Appeal, and just so I can kind of give you guys a little background on what she's talking about, because this is a really cool story. You'll really enjoy this story. Okay, so a few seasons ago on America's Got Talent, there was this amazing group called Pop Life. And they're an all-kid band, you know, and I think the oldest member might have been like 16. And the lead singer of the band was this young lady by the name of Kaylani. And they were from the Bay Area, and they came in 3rd place on America's Got Talent. I want to say it was season 6, I believe. And they got an opportunity to sing on the finale with Stevie Wonder. It was amazing for these kids. But obviously they didn't win. So, you know, they go on and go back home to be kids. So about a year later, I get this phone call from somebody who lives in the Bay Area. And they're saying, hey, you know that girl who's the lead singer of that group Pop Life? She's homeless. And I was like, wait, like she's homeless? She was just a year ago. It looked like they were going on to big things. So I didn't understand. And as I did my research on the young lady, I found out that, you know, she had lost her father at a very young age. I think she might have maybe only been 1 or 2 years old, and her father was murdered in Oakland. And her mother was, you know, having a really difficult time with drugs and wasn't really providing for her. So at 16 years old, she was in, you know, East Oakland, homeless. So I was like, yo, I gotta, whatever I can do, I gotta help the situation. So what I did, you know, kind of got in touch with her school and her guardian and all that stuff, and we moved her to LA. And at the time, I was just focused on, hey, finish school, you know, get your diploma. And, you know, of course, she was interested in music. She has an amazing voice and had never really been in a music studio. Her only experience was singing with this group in live shows and America's Got Talent. So I allowed her to have full access to my studio, whatever she wanted to do. And cut to today, now she's, you know, a signed artist to my record label and doing tremendous things. She's performing at 12 shows at South by Southwest this year. Was on the road with G-Eazy and looks like to be like one of the most prolific writers of her generation, because she's still so young, but at the same time has lived such an amazing life. So she has so many great stories to tell.
And she can sing.
And she can really
can sing.
She's amazing. So we're hoping, you know, fingers crossed, you guys can look her up. She has an amazing SoundCloud, mixtapes and everything. Her name is Kaylani. She's the real deal. They're calling her the next Lauryn Hill. So you guys should definitely check her out. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite books of the year. Certainly my favorite poetry book of the year. Thank you so much for writing it. And I'd just like to know what you're working on next for books.
Book-wise, I mean, obviously, to me, this world, if I can continue to write poetry in the same fashion, like I said, you know, I'm super inspired by Mr. Shel Silverstein. So, you know, from A Light and Attic to Where the Sidewalk Ends, and you know, all his other outstanding books. I would love to do another poetry book in this same form. So that's what we're working on. But even at the same time, I got so many other different cool ideas that we're working on with the great people at Scholastic. So you'll see a lot more from me in this field.
Thank you all. Listen, you're in the right place. So tap onto your iPhones and iPads and you can download this amazing book, Neon Aliens Ate My Homework, the amazing Nick Cannon.
Thank you. The amazing Billy D. Michelle.
Because in your new book, Neon Aliens Ate My Homework. That is like one of the coolest covers ever. I love that cover.
Man. We had a lot of fun with that. Thank you.
But the poem you wrote, School of Hip Hop, is a direct shout out to these great rappers. And I wondered if you'd read it, and we have it on our iPad right here.
Absolutely. I would love to.
And here it is.
It's kind of cool. I'll read the poem, but then also want to just even say, like, there's some interesting ideas that I really got excited with the wordplay and stuff that I did with this. But I'll start off and then I'll get into that afterwards. It says, Kool Herc the founder, Flash the grandmaster, KRS-One the professor, Coach Busy B and Kool Mo D instructed on how to be a word wrestler. Chuck D the lecturer, while Flav had a love for PE. But my favorite three teachers will run DMC. The girls were Salt and Pepper while the boys were Beastie. After recess, we cooled down, cold chilling with Ice Cube and Ice-T. Eric B. and Rakim taught us work because the God don't play. Todd made the class hard as hell. Raise your hand for Mr. LL Cool J. Wanted to receive a degree in NWA. The curriculum was formulated by Dr. Dre. Dougie, Slick Rick, Snoop, Eminem, Outkast, Biggie, Pac, Nas, and Jay. Hopefully one day I can graduate and proudly say hip hop hooray. So I think it's kind of cool.
You have a great story about this.
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously it rhymes and it kind of makes sense. But for anybody, this is really like a history lesson in hip hop if you really pay attention, because Kool Herc is really the founder of hip hop. He was the first person to actually take what was called toasting in Jamaica, where, you know, they would have dance hall parties in Jamaica and there would be a guy that would get on the mic and toast, you know, while there was someone else playing music. So he took that idea of toasting and brought it to the Bronx, and he was literally the first person to take, you know, his mother's turntables and speakers and put it and have a party and talk over the records. So him being the founder, and then, you know, as we all know, Grandmaster Flash, it says Flash is the Grandmaster. He's the one that really turned into an art form, you know, and to this day is still, you know, one of the greatest, if not the greatest DJ. KRS-One, as we all know from Boogie Down Productions, he truly is a professor in hip hop. He teaches, at several different colleges. So it's like even I'm kind of giving them these terms, but this is what these guys actually do. Coach Busy B, or Busy B and Kool Moe Dee, if a lot of people don't know, it was technically the first battle rap ever on, they actually have it documented where Kool Moe Dee and Busy B had a.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I honestly was inspired by several things. I mean, poetry in general, but the first poet that I was truly inspired by and introduced me to the world was Shel Silverstein. So to be able to be a fan of, Where the Sidewalk Ends, A Light in the Attic, and to see what he did with those words and illustrations really touched me. It's like opened a whole new world for me. At the same time, it was simultaneously the idea of, I was a child of hip hop as well. So to be able to experience those two worlds at the same time was really dynamic for me.
A lot of people, do you guys know the writings of Shel Silverstein? Brilliant writer.
Amazing dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's amazing is if you ask a lot of people, he had some great impact on their lives. I know he was one of my favorites. I loved his poem Messy Room because I kept a messy room.
Yeah.
What was your favorite of his writings, though?
I would have to say my favorite of Shel's writings. I mean, I loved all the poetry books, but The Giving Tree was something I was probably, right? That was just the simplicity in it, but how complex it was. Yeah. And, even as a kid, it's just, to know so much about this relationship between this young boy and this tree, and even to where he was always an old man and the tree was still there for him. It was outstanding.
Do you guys like poetry? So, right? Here's the thing. I think poetry sometimes gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
Some people call it elitist, but really, I mean, it's everywhere, right? It's a real showcase for the written word, and so there are poetic references in music, in all of pop culture. But you had some very early influencers when it came to poetry, didn't you? Aside from Mr. Silverstein.
Yeah. I definitely have to say, you say a bad rap. I would just say, honestly, it actually was rap music that actually was my first introductions, as well as just, being a child of hip hop and an 80s baby. That's just street poetry, you know what I mean? It's poetry to a beat. And, today we all know hip hop is probably the biggest cultural thing, around the world, that allows every culture to connect, and they connect through this music and this culture that we've all kind of, from the 80s on, been able to be stewards of. So it's really outstanding to be able to bring the world of written poetry and obviously, street poetry, which we call hip hop, together in one book.
And you did that.
I tried.
You did. So I'm really happy to be here tonight, and I'm going to introduce our guest of honor. I wanted to tell you that People magazine called him one of the top 10 most successful young people in Hollywood. He began performing at the age of 8. At the age of 15, he had already landed gigs at world-renowned comedy clubs in Los Angeles like the Improv, the Laugh Factory, Comedy Store. At 17, he became the youngest staff writer in television history at Nickelodeon, which would become a home for him. And he's come a long way since then as an actor, a musician, a stand-up comic, a television host, a producer, entrepreneur, philanthropist, father, and now an author. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Nick Cannon.
How you guys doing? Woo!
Hello.
Yes, sir.
You are everywhere. I mean, you're doing everything. But this is your first book about poetry. Why poetry?
Man, I feel like poetry is definitely the best form of expression. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and it allows you to tap into your creativity in such a way that, it's an emotional connection, so it's really cool.
And this book came out of an inspiration from when you were a